Okay, I want to go through briefly just how to go and create a very basic program. Um, and this is the Hello World program. So I'm using, Windows 10 and Visual Studio 2019, Visual Studio Community. So just to look it up, there's looking it up, Visual Studio app, selecting it. And the first screen you'll get if you're using Visual Studio Community is it says open recent and it has clone repository, open a project or solution, open a local folder, create a new project. Okay. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to go and create a new project. Click that. Okay. Now you have some choices here. And what I'm going to do and what we're going to do in this class is pretty much we're going to use actually exclusively we're going to do console applications, which is an application that's just text based. So I'll select that and next. Okay, now we have project name and location. All right. So first thing I want to do is I want to click this and change my location to my desktop. Okay, that makes things easier to find it and um, to work on it and find the folder and find the executable, find the source code in that folder. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is have this mean something. So I'm going to put in hello world. Okay. It says place solution and project in the same directory. We can leave it like this. This is fine. If you had selected it, it's all right. Just you'll see the structure's a little bit different, but I'll leave it unselected. I'll also I'm going to I'll give you the programming requirements document, and that will tell you the structure of the naming. And I'll do that when I start to do my examples also. So we'll do create, and it'll open up. Okay. So a couple of things here. So this is the basic template. This kind of starts us off. What you're going to notice here is there's these things that are in like green, and they follow these forward slash forward slash. This is just a comment. Anything here that follows the forward slash on a line is a comment. So it really doesn't matter if this is in or not. This will not be translated into executable code. Okay, it's only for you as a programmer to see and read and try to understand what the program does. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the bottom part here. It's just some additional information. Okay, but there's actually some good notes here. You might want to pay attention. So you can remove this or you can leave it. It really doesn't matter. So I'll tell you what, I'll leave it for now. Later on when we code, I'll remove it. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. Okay. Now, all this program does, and this program will go and display Hello World to the screen. Okay. And I'm going to modify this slightly to show you when we program in this class how we're actually going to go and write our code. Okay. I'll describe these lines, what they mean for now, and as we go further in the class, we'll, I'll go through the details a little bit more, and we'll talk more about these. Okay. This is considered to be a preprocessor directive. Anything you see with this little pound sign here, this is called a preprocessor directive. And what this does, this particular line, is it goes out and gets this other file called IOStream. All right. Now, this is needed by your program. Actually, IOStream is needed by cout. Otherwise, if it wasn't there, then you get an error when you tried to actually compile this. Okay, so all our programs are going to need this. All right. The next thing that we have is this thing called int main. This is actually considered to be what would be considered to be called a function. All right. What we're going to find is that when we write our code, it's essentially our code that executes, and we have some modifications to that a little bit later. But for now, anything that starts with int main is where our code really starts. Okay, where this is the part that's directly translated into executable code. What's in this file called IOStream is also translated into executable code. But it's not something we code, right? We just include it. We just say this is part of what program. But what you're writing will go, at least for now, goes inside these two curly braces. So we have this curly brace, which starts the code, and then we have another one which ends it. Okay, so whatever code you're writing, you put those around it. Okay. Now, this here is pretty straightforward. This means basically this is the what you put between double quotes essentially displays on the screen. Okay. And there's one other thing here, which is \n, which is considered to be it's an escape sequence, and it's considered to be a new line. So if you put this \n like this inside of here, that will make it a new line after Hello World is displayed. Okay. What this does is this is std, which basically says, use this thing called an std library. And then cout means anytime you see cout and then these arrows sort of pointing, double arrows pointing to cout, that essentially means send whatever follows the double arrows to, don't want to do that, Control Z to undo it. Whatever follows these double arrows essentially gets sent out to the display. Okay. So what I'm going to do is at this point, you can actually go through and go to build or whatever and create create an executable for it. But what we're going to do, and at least most of the time, is we're just going to go up here and hit this green arrow. And this is just, it says local Windows debugger. This will actually go and execute the code for us. So if I run this, click it, it'll show you the output window at the bottom. And then it will run it and display it. Okay. So it displayed Hello World, and then it gave you some additional information. So depending upon, what integrated development environment, if you use Visual Studio or not, you may not see this last line, right? This is, I don't think this shows up in other versions of Visual Studio even, but you may or may not see this. This is the part that we care about, right? This is what we wrote, the code that we wrote, okay? Now I'm going to show you an alternate approach, and you'll see this in our text also, so I'll use it here, is that you don't necessarily need this thing called std : okay? That tells about where it finds this code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to say using name space std. So now we don't need to put this in for any of these. So I'm going to get rid of it. And I'll just do this. Yeah, I'll get rid of it. And now when I run it, this code will do the same thing as what we did before. So save all. And I'll just go up here, click, run, and then you'll see it works identically. All right, and that's one of the things you're going to find out with, computer programming, if you haven't done it already, is that there's usually multiple ways to do things, right? So I can do one more thing here. Instead of this, I'm going to do this. Oh. End line. Now, end line essentially does the same thing as that \n. It means new line. So if I run it again, you will see that it's the same thing. Hello World. Okay. So this gives you an idea of the structure. So our program, Hello World, all it is just these basic lines of code, and that will give us Hello World. And what you'll find is that, for every program, we're always going to put this, at least this, we're going to put it in. Then we're going to have at least this integer main, and with the opening curly brace, which is basically delimits a block of code, and then the closing one. So you have to do it in the right direction, right? Because this is different than this one. This is an opening one, so it's the open part of the paren faces towards your code in both cases, right? Okay. And there's one other aspect you'll find with Visual Studio C++. If I go back and do this again, remember end L is end line. If I just go and do this, ENDL, what happens is that Visual Studio has this thing called IntelliSense, and IntelliSense will bring up your options. So it makes life easier because the options will show up automatically. Okay? All right, so let me run it one more time. And there it is, Hello World. Okay? So this is a good like starting point for this. And, as I go through, what I'll do is I'll kind of follow the same process, open Visual Studio and go through the process of creating programs. And each step, I'll step through it kind of again and again. So you'll see it. And one of the other things you'll notice about this is that here's my Hello World. It's on my desktop. So if I click that, this is the directory. So it makes it a lot easier, if you put it on the desktop. So when you first create that project, put it on the desktop. And now if I wanted to open up my program, so let's say I had closed this, right? All right, eventually close this. And I want to go and open up a program that I already created. What you can do is you can go here. This is one way. And then I click on the solution, this .sln file. That is really what you want to open up. So that'll open up everything. Okay. The other way, of course, of doing it, if you wanted to open it up again, Visual Studio. If I did this, of course, and then when it first opens, it says, oh, my recent projects. So I could just click that one and it'll open up the same thing. Okay. Now, one of the things I had mentioned previously in the first day was that you create source code. So this is what you're doing. You're going through and writing this code, and then you're executing it, which essentially is when I hit that green button, it goes through and creates an executable file that can run on your machine. The location where it creates that is in this folder called debug. And there it is. There's the helloworld.exe. So if I double click this, it will open at some point. Okay, did it open it and close it? Maybe. I didn't see it. Oh, maybe it opened and closed it so fast because I didn't have a pause in there. Let me close this, and I'll show you what you can do. Let me go back. I'll go to here, open up a project again. I'll show you what you can do to keep that open. So I go over here, and I put in this thing, system pause. Okay. So now when I run it, it should stop and wait for a keystroke to keep going otherwise. So let me run it. Well, that runs it. That builds it. When I hit that button, it goes and creates the project. It creates the executable for me and does everything else. Puts all the pieces together like I showed you in the first lecture. Okay. So now if I go back into that folder, here it is, debug. And I can look at the time, 8:29, 8:28. Yeah, that's it. And if I double click it now, and there it is. Okay. So in order for you to, so that's now an executable file, right? You could actually take this and put it on your desktop if you wanted to. Now you have a program. Double click on it, and there it is, Hello World. Okay. I'll just move it back for now. Okay. So now that shows you the basic pieces of building a very, very basic program. But as I go through, additional examples, which I'll do, quite a bit, I'll give you more details and I'll kind of walk you through like step by step what each line means. And one of the things about when you go and write code, you should really understand like what is this line for. And there are places where you can look it up. One is called c++.com. That's a place where you can look up and for different instructions and different commands and structure of a C++ program. They also have examples and tutorials. Well, since I'm here, I might as well do that, huh? Okay, c++.com. So www.c++.com. So this is a great resource, and I'll put this link on the website. But they have things like tutorials, which is kind of nice. So you can have different things. Oh, Boolean operations, that's kind of nice. You can actually look at these, and we'll actually take a look at these so-called Boolean operations. All right, so C++ tutorial. So here's all the tutorials, really some nice tutorials, basics and variables, constant operators, which we'll go through this stuff, control structure. So this is a really nice resource for tutorials and other language commands. So let's do this. I'll do this cout, this instruction cout. Cout, it describes cout for you. And we don't use std : because we use the using namespace. And you can click on, let me see, often these things have examples. All right, so this isn't standard out. Does this one have an example? Oh, well, it talks about standard out and standard in, which we'll talk about more later. Maybe there's no example for this one. Okay. But there are examples, and as we move along, we'll take a look at examples here too. So I'll refer to this sometimes also. All right, and that's pretty much it for this, for the Hello World program.